Harumph, I say. Okay. Are you guys ready for another episode of Batman the Animated Series? I know I am. And I'm sure you're all going to be very excited that the episode that we're watching is I've Got Batman in My Basement. No, wait, come back, come back. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. All right. So this is the episode that is kind of infamous for being the episode that Bruce Timm says is his least favorite episode of Batman the Animated Series, the one that he thinks is the absolute worst. And if I'm being honest about it, I remember enjoying it fairly well. I mean, like, I don't remember it being particularly bad. I think when I first watched these, I probably liked it better than I liked Prophecy of Doom. Looking through some of these other episodes, I probably liked it better than I liked the Underdwellers. Uh, Heart of Steel, Pierce's Mark Red, Joker's Wild, His Silicon Soul, Harley and Ivy, Zatanna. There's another Penguin episode. Which one was that? Blind as a Bat. Birds of a Feather and Blind as a Bat. Those are like two Penguin episodes right next to each other. So, Fire from Olympus. Worrymen is the last episode of the first season. So, Paging the Crime Doctor. It might be the worst episode of the first season, maybe, if not for Prophecy of Doom. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Being the worst episode of Batman the Animated Series is not that bad because like this was a high quality show, man. I mean, what are we expecting out of it? If the worst episode is I've Got Batman in My Basement, then I've got just one thing to say about that. It just speaks to what the quality of the series as a whole is, because it's not that bad of an episode of a superhero action adventure cartoon. I'm just saying. Now, that having been said, I don't think it was going to set the world on fire. It wasn't the best episode, certainly. I don't think anybody's going to have I've Got Batman in My Basement at the top of their list of what's the best Batman the Animated Series episodes. That's just not anything anybody needs to worry about. I got a mustache here in my mouth. So yeah, but I do have a theory as to why Bruce Timm had such disdain for this particular episode, and I'm going to get into that. So we are slightly out of order now because of what HBO Max did. It put up Vendetta when it should have put up this episode. It seems to want to skip episodes sometimes. Maybe it was trying to spare me the pain of watching I've Got Batman in My Basement. I don't know. But I promised the next episode would be Prophecy of Doom, so I wrote it out. And I kind of looked at it as a blessing in disguise, because then I have like these two episodes kind of back to back, what I think might be the worst episode of Batman the Animated Series versus what Bruce Timm thinks is the worst episode of Batman the Animated Series. So now that we're back on track, after this episode we will be back on track. The next episode will be The Forgotten, which is an interesting episode. It's another one with no supervillains in it, but it's a memory loss episode, which means it's kind of tropey in that regard. But to me, it almost seems like it could have been an episode of like a live action type of Batman show, because it's relatively low in terms of like the stakes and the epicness of it. So, but I'll talk more about that obviously when we get to it. So that'll be the next episode. That'll be the episode that we have Monday. So if anybody's watching this after the fact, and I've got to assume since I haven't seen my Aunt June, she's going to be watching it after the fact. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is Sunday. This is September the 17th. It is 12:45 p.m. That's what the date and time is. There was an episode recently where she watched it and she wasn't sure if it was a live stream or not. So I think I'm going to try to start saying the day and the date and the time when the episode starts, that it's recording. So that way anybody who missed out on the live stream can have some context as to when this was actually taking place. Years after the fact, people can go back and watch this and be like, oh wow, that would have been around the time that, like, my son started third grade or something like that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with I've Got Batman in My Basement. This is also the first episode to feature the Penguin, so we can talk about the Penguin a bit. You're going to notice as we watch the episode is that the design of the Penguin is very heavily influenced by his appearance in Batman Returns, Danny DeVito's version of the Penguin. And they did kind of tone down on the ick factor a bit. So he doesn't have like the, rotten teeth and the pale skin from living in the sewer and all the black around his eyes and the bile spilling out of his mouth. But it is pretty much, I kind of feel like it took the best parts of the Burton Penguin and kind of made it work in the context of what it is. But one thing I really like about, and we'll see this in Birds of a Feather when we get to that, or was it Birds of a Feather? I think that was the one. Directed by Frank Power. Okay, so the Penguin theme playing over the title card. I'm kind of surprised they didn't push the Penguin a little more. I mean, I guess they did in the early episodes, because at least looking through here, we saw several Penguin episodes, but I kind of feel like maybe they kind of pushed the Penguin into the background a little bit once Batman Returns wasn't really like that prominent in the popular culture anymore after it had its premiere on VHS. Good animation on these guys, like the tension as they're using their little mechanical arm to grab that Fabergé egg. And we know what villain would be after a Fabergé egg. Also, the Penguin is voiced by Paul Williams, famous singer and songwriter and television personality in the 1970s. He wrote the Love Boat theme song. If you had a variety show in the 70s, Paul Williams was on it. He appeared on those an awful lot. And he was the villain in one of my favorite movies of all time, a little picture called Phantom of the Paradise, in which he plays an evil record impresario named Swan. So that's two bird-themed villains that this man has played. Batman having to fight a trained vulture. Birdseed. Yeah. Now we have like a more domestic suburban background.
Yo, Sherman, what you got there? It's a junior detective, and the name's Sherman.
Seeing Sherman and his friend reminds me a lot of Encyclopedia Brown, if you remember those books. She's very Sally Averill.
Can't you find your old species to play with? Don't you just We're just kidding around.
The darker-haired bully kind of looks like what Tim Drake would look like later on when he first appears in the new Batman Adventures.
A vulture in Gotham City? Sure thing, Sherlock. Come on, Roberta. Sherman, where are we going? A vulture in Gotham
They're off to
City
solve
is
mysteries.
Yeah.
25 cents a day plus expenses. Oh, Sherman, you don't know what kind of mystery this is.
Sherman, the signpost is condemned. You shouldn't go in.
What are you, the PSA at the end of the episode? Come on. So, I kind of suspect that part of the reason that Bruce Timm doesn't like this episode so much is not so much because of the quality of the episode, like with the animation or the storytelling or anything like that. I think it's just the type of story that it is. Which, if you were, imagine that you are producing a brand new animated series based on Batman. It's 1990 when you're starting out on this, and there's that Tim Burton Batman movie that's such a big hit, and people are starting to see Batman in a different light from the campy old Batman series, and you're having to fight other preconceptions about the character from like the Filmation cartoons or the Super Friends cartoon, and you're trying to make Batman seem like a serious thing now. Paul Williams is great as the Penguin, by the way. Absolutely, I love his voice. It's not like usually what you think of the Penguin's voice as being, where it's that kind of thing. He brings something different to it, and I really enjoy that. Anyway, so going back to my theory as to why Bruce Timm doesn't like this episode so much. You're trying to make this darker, edgier version of Batman, but you've still got this episode where it's like about a bunch of kids doing like kid adventure kind of things. You don't want to do an episode about kids. This isn't a kids show. I mean, it is a kids show, but it's not a kids show. And I think that was kind of like, it's not so much that this is a bad episode. I think that makes Bruce Timm think it's the worst episode, so much as I think it's something that's outside of how he saw the mission statement of this particular series. You know, as far as Bruce Timm was looking at it, I'm sure he was thinking that you know, he had a duty to make people take Batman more seriously, just as the Tim Burton movie had done. He had a mandate. That's the word, to make this a little more sophisticated. And having a bunch of kids hiding Batman in their basement, not that sophisticated. But I still wound up enjoying this episode. I like this version of the Penguin an awful lot. So I was really happy. And since this was the first episode with the Penguin, I enjoyed seeing the Penguin. Oh, jeez. Ah, and people complain about Batman having machine guns in the Batmobile. He's got missiles and flamethrowers and Goldfinger thing. More missiles. How many missiles do you need, Batman? Oh, there they had a good button. You know, worse problems. Yeah. This is the kind of hijinks I'm talking about where this might be something Bruce Timm was just like turning his nose up at, but I find it genuinely amusing. It's pretty funny. The penguin hanging on the top of the car. So when we get into the new Batman adventures, we'll see the Penguin be redesigned to more resemble the character as he was in the comics, specifically the Golden Age comics. Bruce Timm took it back to his original design of the Penguin, which you can see in a lot of the early production artwork before the studio insisted that Pengy be redesigned to more resemble uh, Danny DeVito's version. He's got a wanted poster of the Joker.
My name's Sherman, and I'm a detective too.
Yeah, sure you are.
See, this is my crime line. It's not exactly that.
I'm always interested in seeing people in these episodes and other series like talk about the Batcave as if it's a commonly known thing, and I wonder, how do they know that the Batcave exists? Is Batman giving interviews? Is there like a Cribs like tour where Batman is showing people around the Batcave and he's like, "Oh, this is where I keep the Batmobile, and there's my giant Joker playing card, and my giant penny, and my robot Tyrannosaurus, and points over. There's my Bat computer, and it's got Scarface playing on it." For those of you too young to remember, there used to be a show on MTV called Cribs, and anytime that they went around somebody's house, they were always watching Scarface. For those of you too young to remember, MTV used to play music. That's why. That's where the M actually came for. They used to play music. So
What are you doing down there? Nothing wrong.
I don't have Batman down here.
No more on it. He just ate that like that. Never had that. That's good. Just don't make sense. Nice going this thing. Sorry, Sherman. I'm going to the store, Sherman. Stay out of trouble. Your thing, Mom.
Yeah. These guys again.
Afternoon, Mr. Grant. Lovely day, isn't it?
So Sherman's last name is Grant. Ah, yes, the old teenage pastime of throwing bricks at empty boxes.
You guys better leave that alone. Oh, God, you sure are scared, aren't you, Nicholas? Oh, yes, sure we are.
I have no idea who this bat-shaped car could belong to. They're clearly not detectives. Yes? Yeah. Come in. Sorry, that's my roommate. I gotta help her out with something real quick. Carry on without me. You can come in.
Yeah, just trying to start getting cleaning my stuff up.
It's still kind of cluttered.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. I'll bring it back.
All right.
Because I've been having it. He's a thing. You can't do my.
Yeah.
All right. I'll bring it back in just a little bit.
All right. It's possible another reason Bruce Timm didn't like this show is because Batman's unconscious for most of it. And maybe it's not good to have your hero unconscious for most of the episode. But this is another example of an episode where Batman isn't even the real protagonist of this episode anyway. It's actually Sherman. I like the Penguin's car. You see how the front of the car has kind of like a vague bird motif? You probably should have done that already. But considering how this is early days, the police might have actually tried to arrest Batman. So then this episode kind of becomes like Home Alone. So there's another character that looks like Steve Buscemi, but when we hear his voice, it's a very familiar voice to anybody who was watching cartoons in the 1990s. That's Rob Paulsen, who famously was the voice of Raphael on the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and probably his most famous cartoon voice would have been Yakko Warner on Animaniacs. Foul play with a W, get it? Wow, that was just mean. You didn't need to break the picture frame. Oh, the Penguins theme. Derp! And you notice how the Penguin actually has his cigarette. This probably would have been one. Like I pointed this out before. One of the last children's cartoons to feature characters smoking. They don't even want to like characters smoking like shows for adults these days. Hmm. Now, Paul Williams would voice the Penguin throughout the animated series, but the Penguin's subsequent appearance on the animated movie Mystery of the Batwoman would be voiced by another actor. I don't remember who it was offhand. Maybe it was George Costanzo. But I didn't like his Penguin quite as well as Paul Williams. Then Penguin would be very heavily featured on the Batman cartoon, uh, and he would be voiced by Tom Kenny, famously the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. Oh, but Batman wakes up just in time. Yeah. You know, Penguin, I don't want to be rude, but you're a little on the heavier side. You're probably lucky Batman didn't pick you up because he does like lifting fat men. He probably doesn't, mind lifting skinny men either. If Steve Buscemi there was any indication. They sure do like to draw the henchman to look like Steve Buscemi. He's got all kinds of gadgets built into that umbrella. I kind of like the idea of Pengy's umbrella being like Batman's utility belt, and he just has like whatever kind of gadget in there that is convenient for the plot at the time. I was going to say earlier, one of the things I like about this particular version of the Penguin is the idea that he wants to be like kind of this like high class character, but he's not really. And we see that a lot in the episode later on with Veronica Breland. Yeah. Pint-sized Pinkertons pluck Penguin. Oh, it's nice that the Vulture got a happy ending.
Where was it? Someone keeps writing Mr. Benucci's newspaper? Right. You and Nick set up a debate. Bert and I will deal with this. God, they're the boss.
So I guess Batman's going to check in on these kids occasionally and make sure that they're doing all right. He's got a soft spot for kids, doesn't he? So, dang it, I missed our vocal cast. I'm going to wind it back a little bit. So, Walker, Andre Romano. There we go. All right, so Kevin Conroy is Batman. He's our only regular recurring character on this. Matthew Brooks is Sherman. Adam Carl is Nick. Lindsay Krause as Mrs. Grant. Richard Gilliand as Frank. Denise Marco as Roberta. Robert Paulson as Jay. And Paul Williams as the Penguin. So, I think this episode was a good introduction to the Penguin. It certainly established his character pretty well. They seem to have the Penguin nailed right out of the gate, unlike the Joker, which I kind of feel like takes a few episodes for them to really get the feel of the Joker. But yeah, Penguin, I think they just got him like pretty much immediately. And yeah, like your purists might not like the fact that they based him on the Danny DeVito appearance, but I didn't mind that so much, and I actually thought they did a really good job of adapting that particular look into the animated series look. Now, granted, the animated series I think always took a little bit of influence from Batman '89, but I don't think they took quite as much influence from Batman Returns for the most part, which aesthetically was very much its own thing and not really that much like its predecessor as far as like the visual look of it goes. But you can almost imagine how like Danny DeVito's Penguin might have fit into like a 1989 milieu with a little bit of tweaking. So that was kind of interesting. So, is this the worst episode of Batman the Animated Series? Well, obviously your mileage may vary, but I'm guessing we're probably going to see worse as the show goes on. But like I said, I don't remember any of these episodes being like particularly bad. I know there's some episodes where like I didn't like them as much as others. Obviously, you're gonna have that on any show, but but it was entertaining to me as I sat here and watched it with you guys. So hopefully you found it entertaining as well. Uh, but if you're watching this in the replay, let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode and if it was indeed the worst episode. And if it wasn't for you the worst episode, let me know in the comments what you think the worst episode was. Because I'm very curious as to hear what people think is the worst episode of Batman the Animated Series. But if we're being real about it, this is such a great show that, like I said, even the episodes that are a little more subpar, they're not like they're still entertaining, and I still enjoy them. So maybe it's just because I love this show so much, but they always do a good job with it. Anyway, the next episode will be The Forgotten, which is we're gonna have some interesting stuff to talk about with that episode. I do think that that's a good one, but it's definitely one that I could see like kids not being that into. It's more of a dramatic episode. It kind of reminds me, like I said, I could imagine it being an episode of a live action Batman show, but it kind of reminds me a lot of, in terms of story structure, The Incredible Hulk, the television series of The Incredible Hulk. I'll get more into talking about that when we actually do that episode. So if you want to make sure you catch that one, make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Make sure that you hit the little bell if you want to know whenever I'm going live and you want to catch one of these episodes as I'm doing it and participate in the chat. This is one that more so than the unboxings, I kind of feel like this is more conducive to a chat format. So I'm definitely interested in hearing from you in the chat as I watch these episodes. So that's pretty much it for now. We will talk to you next time. Bye.